I've got these beautiful strawberry gum leaves that were gifted to me by a friend, and I've never used them for eco-printing before, so I want to test them to see how they eco-print. I want to know what colour are they an interesting looking leaf, and how they perform generally. They have this incredible aroma of fresh strawberries, really quite extraordinary. And there's plenty more on the tree, so if they turn out to be a good eco-printer, I've got a source of new leaves to print with. So how do I tell what to do with these leaves to test them? How am I going to analyse the leaf and figure out what to do? Well, firstly, we know that it's a eucalyptus leaf, which is one of the most popular leaves for eco-printing in Australia because they print so well. So I've got high hopes that they will actually produce an eco-print. Because they're a eucalyptus, I already know something about the way they perform and how to manage them. So because this is a eucalyptus leaf, I'm going to process it for an hour and a half in the steam bath, so I know that already. I already know also that leaves generally, when we're trying to eco-print them, if they're crispy and they're not soft and flexible, they won't work very well. They won't release their dye, but also when you put pressure on them, they'll tend to crumble because they're too crispy. These ones are on the edge of being quite crispy, and I'm not going to take any chances. The way to deal with that is either to soak them in water for a couple of days, or just take a shortcut and soak them in boiling water. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to get the kettle and boil some water, and then pour that on there and wait for about 10 minutes while I prepare to do the rest of the testing. Okay, so there's a number of ways that we could test those leaves. You could roll them onto a roller. So for example, there's a small roller in the beginner kit or the large roller in the original eco-printing kit. Or you use a piece of dowel if that's what you normally do. And you roll the fabric and the leaves together onto the roller quite tightly and steam it for an hour and a half. That's what you would do if you're using rollers. I like using the kit for eco-printing on paper, which has the metal plates in it. That way I can actually test the leaves on fabric, and I can also do it with paper. So we're going to do it that way. These are the two aluminium plates from the kit. They're stained from heavy use, and this one in particular is stained from using it to boil with madder root, which is a red dye. And so being a little tiny bit lazy, I don't want to spend time scrubbing that clean, and to stop it from transferring any of those prints and dyes that are already on the plate, I'm just going to use a little bit of plastic over the top of the aluminium plates to keep it clean. So I've got some paper and I've got some silk, a little scrap of silk to eco-print on to test it with. And I need a mordant to get the leaf dye to stick to the paper and the silk. And so if I've got the beginner eco-printing kit, so I've got a choice of iron or alum. Now I already know from experience of using eucalyptus leaves that I prefer the way eucalyptus leaves print with iron rather than with alum. The reason for that is that alum tends to eco-print leaves with a kind of a yellow tone. This is a rose leaf print that's done with alum. I'll show you. Sometimes that yellow tone can be very bright, and I don't absolutely love it. And I prefer to use the iron, and it's also a really strong eco-print that I'm expecting to get with iron. So it's a classic combination of iron with eucalyptus leaves. Gives a reliable eco-print, so that's what I'm going to be doing, using some iron. Now the iron that I'm using is ferrous sulfate, and there's only really a very small amount, a portion of a teaspoon there that goes in, and I'm going to dissolve that in hot water. I've only really got quite a small amount of hot water there. It's turned the water sort of an orange colour. That's what I've got there. And I've done it in this wide container so I can get the paper in and have it sit flat. So again, I've got my piece of paper and I have a little bit of silk in there. And I'm just moistening that, and then I will take it out of the iron solution. So Now I'll put my first piece of paper down, which is soaked in the iron solution. And I'll probably use this as a card, so I will lay it out anticipating being a useful thing. Looks lovely. It smells amazing. And because I can use both sides if I want to, I'll get 2 cards for the price of one. So I'm going to pop that over the top of the other one, so I get 2 cards. Next, I'm just going to put a little piece of calico cloth that comes in our kit for Ecoprinting with paper, just to separate out that cardboard piece of cardstock from what comes next, so that it doesn't stick. Next, I think I'll just use my little piece of silk, which has been, again, soaked with iron. I'm going to pop my leaf down there. I'm just going to put one leaf there. I don't really have a use for little tiny scraps of silk like this, unless I decide to make a quilt out of it. But I'll fold it over so I can see if there's any difference between one side and the other. Eucalyptus leaves tend to eco-print fairly evenly on both sides. Some leaves are on one side, which just maybe both sides. My next plan is I always tend to put one thing into an eco-printing bundle that I've never used before. And in this case, the tree outside, which is a silky oak, has decided to go on a flower. So my trick is, we're going to use one of these silky oak flowers, and this is a juvenile one on the left-hand side, and a fully in flower. And I have no idea what this is going to look like. But I love experimenting, and just for the cost of a 10-cent piece of paper, I can experiment and have some fun. Now, to have even more fun with this, I have an exhaust bath of dye. So this is a dye bath that has already been used to dye a pillowcase. And so most of the dye is gone from it, but it will still have some in it. And here I have the French terry that we have in the paper printing kit. And I'm going to use that as what we call a dye blanket, just as an experiment. So this is a madder root and marigold dye that will be influenced by the iron that's in the paper. And it's pretty weak dye because, as I said, it's already been used. So I'll use 2 pieces of terry to drape over the top of it and just see what happens. Here we are. Now we put the top of the sandwich in place. And we have our eco-printing sandwich. This is ready to clip. And now we're ready to steam that for 90 minutes. So we have a little induction hob that we get from Kmart. On top of that, we've got a baking dish with a lid, a steamer rack inside with a low level of water that I'm going to keep my eye on so it doesn't run dry. So, as often happens, the dye blanket itself has picked up some lovely eco-print. So it's quite interesting. So that's the French terry that we use just to transfer the dye, which is the dark colour, onto the paper. Now this was our experimental piece of silky oak with a madder and marigold dye bath in a blanket over the top. Certainly an interesting result. And it looks as though that silky oak Ecoprint's quite dark. That's a beautiful colour. That is very unusual. I'll dry that, wash it and bring it up to show you the finished result, but that has a deep, almost maroon colour. Very, very lovely. Here we have the paper that I did. So on one side, again that unusual colour. Really, it's like a strawberry, and it's a strawberry gum. How unusual. I love it. Very different sort of result. And it's nice and clean on the back. In fact, the print has gone right through the paper, and it's almost grey, blue-grey on the back. And on the front, it's this strawberry colour. Very unusual. Wow, that was a good experiment. Ended up with, so this was a single gum leaf, and it's ended up with a kind of a reddish blue sort of strong print. This was the experimental grevillea, and I think that's probably 10 cents wasted. It probably needs to be tested with alum. I'd say it's dark and muddy. This one was the paper print, and it's printed very strongly in sort of blue tones, and it's such a strong dye, it's come right through to the back, almost in strawberry tones. And out of that one bunch of leaves, I got the two prints. This was the one on the other side of the same print batch. So, looking good.